Today is Wednesday. I don't know what day because this is a new computer and it doesn't have my little date
March
thing
the 7th.
showing. March the 7th, 2012. I'm Matthew TG.
I'm Heath Mulligan.
And I'm Tony Casey. Welcome to the Techology Show, a weekly podcast featuring technology, theology, and everything in between. The world's only user-antagonistic podcast. This is episode 147. So, warning to our listeners this morning.
Yes.
We are on a totally new setup here. Master TG, the mad scientist, has built a computer.
I've built a Hackintosh. Yes, I've built it with my own hands.
It's alive!
And let me tell you, when they say, well, Macs are great because they just work, that is the truth. They are great because they just work. Hackintoshes do not just work. You have to go through a lot to make them work. But I think we're up and running at this point, and my fingers are crossed.
Yeah, and this is just a warning if something goes wonky in the broadcast.
We could totally crash and burn. We may not even have a recording of today's episode, depending on what happens if it were to crash. So this is really just a test day. We didn't actually expect to be ready today with this. Didn't even know last week at this time.
Right, yeah. So we're pretty jacked about this. So an exciting week for Matthew and for Heath. Heath, you got the interview, dude.
Yeah, we knew last week we were going to go get to see the Blue Light Jazz screening in Greenville, and we're just hoping we could get just a few minutes with Donald Miller. And as soon as we pulled up, I'm like, this is gonna happen. And so we got to interview some great people before the movie, and then Steve Taylor, the director of the movie, and Donald Miller gave us some time, and they were absolutely great. So super. Just took the time. It was great. They were wonderful.
Well, we're gonna see the interviews, and also I think that you have brought for our listeners
That's right.
giveaway.
We're gonna be doing a giveaway. This is the official, one-of-a-kind autographed poster, autographed by Donald Miller and Steve Taylor, and we're gonna be giving that away. And gonna be spending the next month. The movie opens April 13th, so we're just wanting to pump the movie and get people out to see it.
All righty. We also want to welcome, via Skype, Heather Semple. She's the lead pastor at Red Cedar Community Church in Rice Lake, Wisconsin. Good morning, Heather. Welcome to the show.
Hey.
Listen, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about who you are and tell us a little bit about your family.
Okay. Yeah, I'm the lead pastor up here way north, Rice Lake, Wisconsin. Most people know me as Heather Kinnan. Come from this long Wesleyan dynasty, apparently, or so I'm told. So I grew up in the ministry. Never thought I'd be sitting in this position, but glad that I am. So I feel blessed. Yeah.
Tell us about your husband, kids.
Right. Jeff he's our worship creative arts pastor. We have 3 kids, 2 girls, and we just had a little boy about a year ago. So life is never dull. This is a whole new phase with me being lead. I was only part-time spiritual formation pastor prior to this. So this has been, it's still an adventure. Every day is an adventure, but we love it. And it is an interesting dynamic. It was interesting when we worked together. It's really interesting when I'm the boss. Although he says it's really no different than what always has been, but nonetheless.
Yeah, so we were talking in the pre-show that one of the things your husband likes to talk about is that he sleeps with the lead pastor, right?
He does. He loves that. I think he'd probably say it from up front if I'd let him, but yeah. He's sleeping with the pastor, sleeping with his boss. He just likes to see how many sexually harassing comments he can make during staff meetings.
That's funny. That's funny.
Oh, listen,
awesome.
Let's jump into the interview. I know you were raised in a Christian home and in the context of ministry. Talk to us a little bit about your heritage and the influence that had on you.
Yeah, every male on my dad's side of the family is in the ministry. My grandfather, my dad, my brother, my uncle, my great-grandfather was. They all were. And so it's really all I ever knew. It's what I grew up in. It's what the conversations were around the dinner table. The church was kind of our second home. I've known ministry, and I feel like in some ways I've been sort of groomed for this without even realizing it. And the Lord was molding me and shaping me for the last 36 years, and I just wasn't aware. I I'm so grateful. I don't know how people do it. I mean, I know people do it. They do this thing without having that heritage and that ministry wisdom and that history behind them as they move into this kind of a role. But I mean, it's something I draw on almost daily. I mean, I'm always calling one of them up to ask them about this or that, or get their wisdom or get their direction. And vacations are a lot of fun because we just sit around and write chapters on weird things that happen in ministry. But I love it. I love the family that I come from. And
now a lot of people may not know this, but Heather and I graduated in 1997 from Southern Wesleyan
That's right,
with
buddy.
each other, and we had such a great class of people. We're all still fairly close. Heather, we were talking in the pre-show. You know, you graduated with an elementary education degree. So tell us a little bit about the journey from there that has brought you to the place where you're at, being the lead pastor at Red Cedar, and then talk a little bit about the type of church it is in your ministry there.
Well, my journey in college, I mean, I did graduate with an education degree. I think it was just something I chose. I bounced around from major to major, not really sure what I wanted to do. I actually think God probably called me into the ministry when I was a little girl. I just didn't recognize it or know it. I'd never seen women do anything like that. I wrestled with the Lord for quite a few years through college. And so hearing his direction wasn't something that still small voice was not the loudest one in my ear sometimes. So when I graduated, I just picked something I could do, I could make a living at, and did that. But over the years, I did that for a good decade. And every day I would get up and go to work, and it was so unfulfilling. I mean, I told you guys before we started, I don't even like other people's kids very much. I mean, that's just the truth. I love mine, but I don't like being in the classroom and doing all that kind of stuff. I found myself loving the teaching part, the breaking things down and building it back up for greater understanding, but not loving on so much the little ones. And so just really was trying to seek God for what he wanted for my life, and got married, and my husband was in ministry, and found myself looking at what he was doing, and what at the time there was a woman in the church that he was working at who was ordained, and watching what she was doing, and finding myself longing to be able to do that.
Wow. And
finding my gifts and my talents fitting really well into that, and had a moment of real clarity. I think we all have those as pastors when we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that God speaks to us in those specific moments. And I had a moment with the Lord back in 2000, and knew that he was saying to me, what I have for you is a life in ministry. And so just started that pursuit. Went back to seminary, all that kind of stuff. When I graduated.
Where did you go to seminary?
Nazarene Theological Seminary, over with the Nazarenes.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're good people.
Yeah, they are good people, and it was great. Seminary was a great experience for me.
Good.
And a real discovery time for me. When I graduated, Jeff and I started looking for positions together in a church, which was really unique because we were kind of a package deal. I mean, he's got his thing, and I had my thing, and what church wanted to take us both, and that was hard.
Sure.
But ended up here in Rice Lake, Wisconsin, with him as the music guy, me as the spiritual formation chick. And we've been here for almost 5 years before I stepped into this role. So that,
yeah,
I don't know.
My understanding, I mean, you and I had a little discussion yesterday that originally when the senior pastor there resigned, it really wasn't on your radar screen to even present your name as lead pastor. This kind of was a groundswell thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, very much. When he left, our lead pastor, Craig Cooper, took another church in Battle Creek, Michigan, and he asked Jeff and I if we would go with him and basically do there what we'd been doing here. And we thought, okay, that makes sense. In ministry, career, trajectory, so to speak, that makes sense. And we actually put our house on the market, and we're making preparations to do that. And just had a lot of unrest in my soul. And there were things that I was doing that I was loving doing and feeling like I was born to do. And I knew that by continuing on in a staff position, I would be able to do them no longer. You know, for example, in the interim, they'd asked me to step up as teaching pastor, and I was preaching every week and loving that and didn't want to give that up. And so even though our house was on the market, we were sort of preparing to go, I just wasn't settled about it, and neither was Jeff. And so we had people coming asking if I would consider throwing my name in the ring. And initially I thought, no, that's a little crazy. Hadn't really thought about that. But the more I sat in it, kind of marinated in the thought, and I had another real moment of clarity with the Lord. And he very specifically told me it's what he had for me. And so I did. Wow. I threw my hat in, and I threw it in with the other 35 resumes that were sitting on their desk to look at, and went through the very same process that everyone else did. And just because I was on staff, it didn't somehow catapult me to the front of the line. It was important that I had to do everything that everyone had to do, because being a woman, that was important. It needed to be established that it wasn't just because I was here that I was placed in that role, but because of my calling and my giftedness.
Sure.
And so it's a long process, but
and when
I'm telling you, I'm doing what I was born to do. I know that for sure.
And when it was over and the vote was done, I understand that there was spontaneous applause throughout the congregation.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
It's so funny because I'm just this.
I'm longing for that moment. I
Girl,
never
and
had
all
that.
these like lumberjacks, hunters, gatherers up here in northern Wisconsin are just leaping to their feet cheering, and I wasn't even anticipating that, but it was a good weekend. It was fun, and the people here are just wonderful and have been so encouraging, and
great.
It's an exciting time right now for sure.
Listen, you know, our denomination has a rich heritage as far as women in ministry. I mean, we were, you know, part of the suffrage movement early on. Luther Lee, one of the founders of our denomination, preached the very first ordination sermon for a woman, I believe, in church history. Now that being said, it's still been a challenge for women, even in our denomination, to get placement in ministry. Who are some of the people who've kind of, you know, gone before you, opened doors, or just helped you, or maybe other women that you've looked up to throughout this process?
Sure. Well, when my husband and I, his first church that he had as a youth pastor after we got married was in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, First Wesleyan.
Yeah.
And Gail Kerstetter was on staff there. Mm-hmm. She's now down at SWU. Right. And she was this ordained minister, and that was something new to me. I knew that in the Wesleyan denomination that was technically okay, and we said was good and right, but I had never really encountered it. And she was somebody that was highly influential, both in really my spiritual freedom and helping me determine my calling in life. And it was really those years with her, I think, that were catalytic for me. There have been moments, you know, and honestly, there aren't a lot of women doing it. So there's not a lot I can point to and say, well, she was a great door opener. She was a great door opener, but because there's not a lot of them. Now, even though I don't know her, I know Christy Lipscomb's out in Michigan. Right. And when she and her husband, you know, started that church, even though I didn't know her, that was a door opening for the rest of us that I was grateful for and appreciated.
What kind of?
Yeah.
I was gonna say, what kind of?
Joanne Lyon. I mean, good grief. I think I cried when they elected her, but it's, you know, it just was affirming. So.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, I mean, what kind of influence you think it's had in our denomination that one of the general superintendents is Dr. Joanne Lyon?
Right. And what's been great about that with her is when you see her, you don't think, oh, there's a woman in leadership. You just think there's a great leader.
Yeah,
great.
You don't even really think about the fact that, you know, the femininity piece of it. It doesn't even really occur to anybody because she's so phenomenal. And that's really even my hope for me and what I've discovered here. Nobody really cares or talks about the fact that I'm a woman up here. It's just they love the leadership and they appreciate the gifts, and they're ready to move forward, and it's refreshing. And so it's just, as long as I'm allowing the Lord to help me be the best I can be, being a chick doesn't matter. You know?
Now, Heather, you've been around ministry up close your whole life. How do you think ministry has changed in your lifetime, and what are some challenges that the church is facing now that we didn't face 10 or 15 years ago?
Wow, that's a big question. Honestly, when I was small, I just remember ministry. I don't know that I necessarily paid attention to leadership in ministry when I was younger. I mean, I watched my family in ministry. I think today it feels much more fast-paced. The leadership structure, the call to leadership, we're moving pretty quick, and we tend to function more in our strengths. Remember when I was smaller, the pastors just tended to be the jack of all trades.
Yeah, right.
And do everything and have their hands in everything, and not so much that way today. And so we see, churches getting bigger and staffs getting bigger, and more segmenting and more departmentalization. And, the struggle is often how to remain integrated and how to have community in a church, in a leadership structure that's really more advocating segmentation. So, and that's something that I'm dealing with here that wasn't so much the case. I don't remember growing up, even though, my dad was a pastor of some larger churches. It felt a little easier.
One of the things, Heather, that we have talked about on this show on numerous occasions is the segmenting of ministries, and really a lot of research is showing us that somehow we have to find a way to get intergenerational ministry implemented in the church once again, because with all this segmentation, what we've become is siloed, and so the kids do their things, the teens do theirs, the adults do theirs, the senior adults do theirs, and the research seems to suggest that's not a good thing for the church, that the younger and the older generations need these contact points along the way. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, I think the observations there is certainly what we've discovered. That's there.
Heather, one of the challenges I've faced moving into being a senior pastor is I can't even put into words the weight that you feel that you're carrying as a senior pastor. Talk about that a little bit. In just a few months you've been the lead pastor. What has changed as far as just that weight? And I know for me, I just had to be better about taking time off, getting more sleep. What are some things that you've done to physically and emotionally and spiritually handle this huge responsibility you've taken on?
It is different, and I remember hearing my family talk about it growing up, that weight, that mantle of responsibility that comes even when you move from staff pastor to lead pastor. And maybe you always think you're prepared for it, but not really. So what I've discovered is that I'm much more aware, think of the eternal ramifications of every decision I make, because the buck stops with me. And so where I was on staff, and there is weight that comes with that. It's a whole nother level as lead pastor, and I'm learning to manage that. It's a different rhythm. I think the word balance is stupid and overrated. There is no such thing.
Right.
And there will never be an equal part of me being given to everything. There are decisions, we make for our family that maybe seem unconventional to some and may make me, as I've been told, not the Proverbs 31 woman, who I also think is ridiculous, but we just do things to make it work, because my belief is that not has only God called me to this role, but he's called our family to this, and it works.
Sure.
So I do have to get more sleep, and since Jeff and I work together, we have to work really hard when we get home to shut off the shop talk, because it can get a little heavy. And with me now being the boss, that can be weird too. And so I have to mentally make the adjustment from being the boss here at work, and then I go home and I'm his wife. And that's just a reality of our life. And we're still figuring that out. We're still learning how to find a new rhythm in that. I'm pretty sure when we get that down, something else will come up and we'll have to find it all over again. But it's...
Well, and that's the nature. I mean, it's the nature of life and the nature of ministry. I mean, ministry is always changing. It just mimics life in that respect. You know, I'm sure that along the way you have some heroes in life and ministry. I'm just curious who they are and why some of these people hold a special place in your heart.
Heroes, I think, honestly, the heroes in my life are the people in my family. Like my little brother is one of my heroes. He's not so little, but nonetheless, I call him little. My dad is definitely one of my heroes. My mom, I think, because I've watched them walk through life and walk through ministry and all of the things that come with it and the beast that it is sometimes. And I watched them wage wars, and I've watched them have victories and go through agony in it, and then experience great joy. And so they're my heroes because they're still in it, and they're still doing it, and they're still making it happen for the kingdom. And I admire that. You know, my dad, who's been in this for decades, and he's still saying, you know, I want to be relevant. I want to push the envelope. I want to expand the kingdom. I want to be that guy. And I think when I get there, I still want to be doing that. I still want to be saying that. And I admire that.
Sure.
You know, Heather, we talked about women in ministry and in our denomination, and you talked about some of your heroes. Since moving into your new position, have there been other younger women in ministry who are now looking to you for advice and support, and what has that been like?
Oh, yeah, sure. Well, since I came into this, I joke that I'm like the new poster girl for women in ministry, which is fine, which is great. I mean, I know that I'm sitting here with you today because I'm a woman, and that's okay with me. I get that. And I get emails and calls and things like that from other women who I haven't known, but they're trying to push through that glass ceiling, and they're experiencing a lot of opposition. And I do think that if I can, you know, my position and what God has done in my life can even put a chink in the glass ceiling, if I can open the door a little bit more for someone, then I'm thrilled to do it. You know, I want to be cautious too, because, you know, when I function on a daily basis, I don't walk into my office every day thinking, you know, I'm woman, here I am. You know? So.
Well, and you don't want to, you know, Heather, I would just say you certainly don't want to put undue pressure on yourself, because the responsibilities that you have in ministry aren't any greater than anyone else. And a lot of times you can put pressure on yourself to think, well, in some way, you know, my best staff member was Michelle Bryant, and you know, I remember saying to her early on that your goal isn't to be a good female pastor.
Right.
Your goal is to be a good pastor.
Right. Exactly. And I don't want the defense for women in ministry really, you know, can't come from ranting and raving about, you know, women's equal rights in that. It really just has to come from us being effective leaders. And that's the defense. My calling and my giftedness, I believe, are what are all I have to do and all I have to be.
Right.
And when I come to work and, you know, when I'm leading our people, my only thought is our mission. My only thought is, you know, Red Cedar Community Church, what has God called us to do? How has he called me to lead? And that's how I make decisions. Yeah. And I don't really ever consider the fact, you know, I should do this or should not do this because I'm a woman.
Well, listen, it has been great having you. Just want to give you the opportunity to let our listeners know where they might be able to find you on the internet. Yeah.
I mean, you know, you can go to our website, redcedarcc.org. I mean, all the sermons are there. Yeah, right. I told you earlier, I do have a Twitter account. I don't ever use it. I probably should.
You're on Facebook.
I think I tweeted one time and just thought, well, there's a lot of steps to this. I don't know if I could do this, but I don't know. They tell me that's what lead pastors do. So
Now,
maybe someday in the future I'll pick it up.
Now, Heather, do you have a blog?
I do have a blog. I haven't. It's heathersimple.com. There's some things from a few months ago. I haven't updated it much, and I don't update it much. Again, it's one of those things that I have so much happening, and I have a mission I believe God's given me for this church that we're doing in our community. So some of those superfluous things I've just set to the side because, you know, the rest of the world, you know, what do they need to hear from Heather Semple for right now? You know, maybe at some point I'll put more time and energy into that, but
we get it. We understand.
Well, I was reading your blog last night, and you were talking about some of your friends from college, and I knew who you were talking about, and it made me long for the old SWU days and hanging out at the trailer and
see, this is great because
stuff.
It's proof that you guys are getting older. Because now we just went into this reminiscing thing. I remember when.
That thing should have I think it was at some point just bulldozed that thing.
Yeah. There's a building there now.
Well, Heather, thanks so much for taking time out to be with us. It's been delightful to just have you talk about your experience. We are so happy for you. Understand that the tremendous growth is happening right now.
It's a fun time right now. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like a fast-moving train. I'm trying to keep it on the track.
Yes.
But,
well, Lord bless you, and as the Lord brings you to mind, we'll remember you. All right.
Thank you so much, guys.
All
hey,
right.
thanks, Heather. Good talking with you.
Bye-bye. Yeah, you know, I know Heather's parents well. Her mom was actually a teacher, and both of our kids had her mom, Kathy. And her parents are just quality people, and you can see that in her. And
when we were getting ready we were in a transitional phase, and Heather's brother David called me, and he had just started pastoring out in South Dakota.
Okay.
And a great opportunity, and was looking for a youth pastor. And I just remember talking with him and just feeling this pull, because I knew David when I was in college, and just knew God was going to do great things, but just didn't have that go after it. And I wondered, man, am I going to regret that? And obviously things worked out, but just a great family. Tom was on staff at Southern when I was there, and
South Dakota. Now the state trees the telephone pole, right?
yes.
Sorry for any South Dakota people out there. All right, listen. All right, let's transition here. The Donald Miller. So you guys got a chance to interview him. You got a chance to introduce the producer of the movie,
the director, Steve Taylor.
The director, okay. Yeah. So let's take a look at the interviews. Which one are we going to have first here, Matthew?
So first we hit the street.
Okay.
Because our first hour was literally spent outside in the freezing cold, and it was fun. We go around to different groups. Heath, being the front man, who's not afraid to go up and say, "Hey, you want to talk to us about this?" And so he'd do that, and it was funny because there'd be like these clusters of people. And we'd go up and talk to them, and they'd always be like, all the girls were always like, "No."
They were trying to stay
away.
warm, is what they were trying to do.
Yeah,
it was freezing.
But they'd always like point to the one person in the group who is like the spokesperson for that little cluster of people. So that's what this first video is. Here we go.
All right. Yeah.
Hey, this is Heath Mulligan with the Techology Show. We're out here at the Hollywood 20 in Greenville, South Carolina, here for the semi-world premiere. It's the world tour of the Blue Like Jazz movie. We're here out braving the cold weather with some brave souls. We just want to get their thoughts on Blue Like Jazz, the book, and what they think about seeing the movie for the first time here tonight. I'm here with Kevin Steinhardt, who's here at the Blue Like Jazz tour. Kevin, it's been about 9 years since Blue Like Jazz came out as the book. Tell me what you thought of the book, and how excited are you to see the movie tonight?
Yeah, the book was excellent and really formative to some of my early years of my faith. I'm interested to see the movie and see how it translates into movie form. It should be great.
Now, have you read any of Donald Miller's other books, Searching for God Knows What, A Million Miles and 1,000? I said that wrong, but he's got some other great books. What do you think of those books?
Yeah, I've actually read all of Donald's books. I've got to see him live before, and he's a really great guy. His books are excellent. I love all of them.
We'll check back in with Kevin after the movie. I'm sure it's going to get great reviews, so thanks a lot. I'm here with Russ McDonald, another brave soul braving the cold weather for the Blue Light Jazz Tour. Russ, I know you said it's been a while since you read Blue Light Jazz. Tell me what you thought of the book, and how excited are you to see the movie tonight?
I really enjoyed his style. It's a very conversational style, very insightful, really, really witty and funny. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the movie.
Awesome. Now, Donald's also got some other great books. Have you read any of those, and what are your thoughts on his other books?
I read, I think I read, was it A Million Miles in 1,000 Years, Searching for God Knows What, and To Own a Dragon. Yeah. And they're all very good. And same style, same insightful, witty content. It's very good stuff.
Well, Russ, thanks for sharing with us. We're all excited. We're just waiting now for Donald to make an appearance, and we're excited to see the movie, so thanks a lot for talking with us. I'm here with Sonny Lemons, the best name of the night.
Thank you.
And Sonny has read Blue Like Jazz. And Sonny, what did you think of the book, and how do you think it's going to translate into the movie tonight?
Actually, it's weird. It's one of those books, you hear people say, this book changed my life. It came close. It didn't change my life, but it was really good. I've wondered, how are you going to take something that's a first-person narrative and make it an ensemble cast? But I have faith in the filmmaker. I think that it's like, I read A Million Miles in 1,000 Years, and I thought, if this is how it's going to translate, then yes, you guys are absolutely on the right path for it.
Now, you mentioned A Million Miles in 1,000 Years. Have you read any of Donald's other books, and what are your thoughts on those?
Yeah, Searching for God Knows What was probably my favorite book that he had written. I really have a soft spot in my heart for To Own a Dragon, dealing with all the fatherhood stuff that he was going through, and so that it struck a chord with me and hit home a lot. So that probably was, I've probably bought like 15 copies of that book to give out to other people who grew up in a single father household. So.
Well, Sonny, thanks for sharing with us. We're all getting ready to see this movie and very excited, so thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm here with Chad Muston at the Blue Light Jazz Tour. Chad, what did you think of Blue Light Jazz, the book, and how do you think it's going to translate onto the big screen?
Well, the book came highly recommended to me by quite a few of my coworkers, and so after a few times of hearing, hey, you got to read this book, I thought, okay, I better check this out. So I did, and I found it very interesting, and I think a lot of people would also say this, that it seems like it parallels a lot of the different experiences that people have in just regular life as they try to sort of understand, and try to sort out their own theology and everything. So to me, I found it interesting on both a deep level, and then also it was just an enjoyable read. It was hard to put down. I will say this, I'm interested to see how it's going to translate into a film. For writing something that borders on memoir, it seems like it's going to be an interesting transition to change it over into a screenplay. So that's something that I'm curious to see kind of how they do with it.
I don't know about you, but for me, Blue Like Jazz, it just struck a chord with a whole generation, because I think Donald Miller was saying so many things that we had all been thinking or experiencing it, and it's just a book that a lot of people have on their shelf. What have you read any of Donald's other books, and what do you think about those?
I have. I went immediately after I finished Blue Light Jazz and started reading Searching for God Knows What, and then also most recently I read A Million Miles in 1,000 Years, and I thought, for both of them, I felt like it was going to be difficult for him to carry on his style that he seemed like he had, and I was impressed that he was able to. I felt like it was true to it. It wasn't so much of a sequel, as it was just more of the thoughts and everything that he had, and it was very evident that his voice. I'm a writing teacher actually, and so I try to tell my students about how to include your personality, how to include your voice in what you write. I mean, Donald Miller is an excellent example of that. I mean, for me, I think he speaks volumes, and it's like you get inside of his head while you're reading it, and I mean that's just such a rarity, to be able to read something like that. It just feels like you're sitting down talking to him. So.
You're absolutely right. Well, Chad, thank you for talking with us tonight, and we hope everybody enjoys the movie.
So that was there as things were getting started, and then it wasn't but another what felt like an eternity later.
Yeah,
I was standing in the cold.
Well,
finally we were able to go inside.
Well, a couple of things happened. Is Donald had some family that had come in town, and so they were hanging out on the bus. And then also, there's a character in the movie. I don't even know if they ever tell you his name.
No, he's just called the Pope.
Just called the Pope.
Yeah.
His parents live in Beaufort, South Carolina. They just happened to be driving by, saw the bus, and stopped and came and saw the movie. They hadn't seen the movie yet.
Yeah,
And,
so that was
pretty
cool.
cool.
So of course, those guys right there at the beginning got and rightly so, the majority of the time. But then we went in, we saw the movie. We probably shouldn't play the second interview till after we talk about the movie.
Yeah.
So Heath, I guess this is done to me and you since
This
Tony,
is cool.
you weren't
I
there.
haven't heard
Yeah.
anything about this.
Yeah.
So it really was interesting how they took because Blue Like Jazz is essays. It is memoir. It isn't a linear thought. Like there's no timeline to the book itself.
No.
It jumps around. It makes great significant points.
Right.
I mean, and does extremely well in doing that. But there's no. It's not like reading a novel or reading even a biography or anything like that. It's
And that's
more,
very much, Miller's writing style.
is.
I just started reading A Million Miles in 1,000 Years, which is about the process of turning the book into a movie. One of the questions during the Q&A, someone asked, well, how much of this movie is factual and is, correct? He's like, none of it. He's like, the movie's all fiction. I mean, my name is Donald Miller, and I did go to Reed College, and I do have a friend named Penny.
Some of the situations
Right.
were for real out of the book.
Right,
So
right.
so some of the things that happened
Right.
did happen. So it was. I think Steve Taylor actually shot back at me and said, "Well, I wouldn't quite put it that way. That it's all fiction. Like there are things, and then there are the themes." And so it's trying to take some of the themes that are in the book and turning them into the film. They really focus strongly on Reed College. He does talk a lot about that in the book, but I don't feel like it's as primary, as much the primary focus in the book as it was the film about this guy's transition into that place. So what are your questions?
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
What
The-
did you?
the
all right,
pr-
we have
love-
people out there.
love
Is it
the
worth
movie.
going to?
Oh, absolutely.
Now-
It is. Now it is.
It is a PG-13 movie.
It is, and it
and
earns.
it earned its PG-13
Yes.
rating.
Yes.
And it is a different, like somebody asked, they said, after the film was over, they asked Donald, they said, should I bring my youth group to see this movie? Like, why should I? And he made a couple good points. The first one he made was that right next door there was playing a movie called Project X, which
Yes.
I came back and actually looked up the trailer for. I would not recommend that anybody do so.
No.
At all. He said, there are some things in this film that you haven't ever seen before in
Right.
another Christian labeled film.
Right.
But your kids are going to be going to see Project X.
So his argument is that they're being exposed to much worse now.
But it's
right.
not just that, but that in this, that then there is a bit of resolution in
Yes.
some of these themes. So
Yes.
so even though this stuff's going on, it comes to some sort of conclusion.
And I would not say that any of the language in the movie was gratuitous. They are trying to portray an 18 to 19-year-old man who has grown up in a sheltered Christian fundamentalist environment and is now at the most liberal college in the United States.
Right.
What would happen? And I think they do an amazing job of chronicling.
And if people
that
don't
journey.
realize it, Reed does have. I mean, literally, Reed has this reputation.
Yes.
This
Yes.
isn't. We're
It is
not just saying this. It's
very
not our opinion.
intelligent
It's a-
college, but
right.
it is a very liberal. I
Right.
mean, the only thing that's unacceptable, Donald said this,
Yep.
it came up in the film, the only thing that's unacceptable at Reed College is being a Christian.
Yeah.
Like that's it. That's the only thing that crosses their boundaries.
And there's some really cool, if you don't know a story about how the movie was made, they're getting ready to start production, and one of their major fund people backs out. And so they don't have the money to make this movie, and they're like, can't make the movie. And a couple of guys just say, hey, they made a video, they sent them a video and says, we want to save this movie. So they started a blog, they started this thing on Kickstarter, and they had to raise $125,000 in 30 days. They raised $345,000, so the movie was able to be made. Steve is laying out who he wants to be in the movie, and he has this the guy Marshall Allman is the actor who plays Donald Miller in the movie. And he's like, oh, he'd be good. I've seen him in a few things. And so somehow gets Marshall Allman's email. And normally you got to go through the agent and you got to go through all these channels. And he just sends him an email, just emails him the script. And Marshall Allman responds back to him and says, hey, I didn't get the chance to read the whole script, but I'm in. I'm a Christian. I have been looking for a project like this. You have to let me play this part.
Cool.
I would do anything. And so it was just little things like that that made the movie even possible. And I thought it was. It's not most Christian movies, and I love them. I love a lot of them. They tend to tie things in a nice, neat little bow. And Donald had a great comment the other night. He said, "Nothing in life is tied in a neat little bow until we're reunited with God, till the end of time."
So there's kind of a dissonant.
There is not
here.
everything. Not everything is. It reaches a great conclusion. If you've read the book, you could probably guess where it's going to end, because it is a very powerful moment in the book. And I don't want to give it away because there's people that haven't read the book and haven't seen the film. But it does come to a bit of a conclusion. There is drinking in the movie. There is cussing in the movie. There are homosexual characters in the movie. Yeah. And one of the things that Miller also said about this, he said, as we look at this, God made us to think. We don't want to make this and try to dumb it down for people or simplify it. By putting some of this stuff in the movie, we're not trying to endorse it or say this is okay or this is acceptable. You need to come into this thinking. So, like, I wouldn't take a 13-year-old to see this movie. No. I would take a junior or senior in high school to see it and go. I believe when I actually read this book, I believe it was you, Tony, who actually told me. He said you need to have some people to talk with about this as you read through this book. Mm-hmm. Like, don't just read it. Yeah. Read it and discuss it with some other thinking people. I think it was you that told me that. And I would say the same thing. The same is true about the film. You need to be able to say ahead of time, okay,
it's a good word.
This is kind of,
It's a good word.
Yeah. This is kind of what we're dealing with here. Yeah. Don't go into this thinking that just because we're going to see this movie that everything that you're going to see is acceptable, or everything that you're going to see is endorsed by me or by anybody else. But let's use this as a talk to say, okay, where are we at? And it really made me look back on myself and say, how am I being perceived? That was the biggest thing, because you see as he's coming out of this very fundamental Christian background, like the perceptions of him, and I think it is the way the world sees us sometimes. It is bizarre, and it really was a challenge to my heart to say, how would the totally unchurched see me, and how can I learn to make myself somewhat relatable to them without crossing any line that I shouldn't cross or whatever.
Okay, I know you want to follow up here, and then after the follow-up, we need to get to about 12 minutes.
There's a review of the movie up today at heathmullican.com, and this is definitely a movie when my kids are old enough. I'm going to watch it with my kids, and we're going to talk through it. And there's a line in the movie where Donald's at college. He gets on the phone with his mom, and she asks him, have you found a church yet? And I'm like, as a parent, when we send our kids off to school, it's my responsibility to think that an 18-year-old kid is going to go off to school and go to a new place and automatically default to, oh, I need to find a new church this morning. That is a process that I, as a parent, if my children go away to school, I'm going to actively engage in that process.
Yeah, you've talked about that before.
And I think that's one of the great things you can learn from the movie is there's just so many, and again, it's fiction, but there's some disconnects there. And I loved it. Great.
In the chat room there, I'm sorry. I know you're ready to move on. Hold on one more second. They're talking about, that a 13-year-old may be more prepared and might actually be all right. And that's true. They might, but have the conversation. Yeah. Don't just go and let that be that. Follow this up before and after with discussion. Okay, so we're going to see this movie. This is why. We want to approach it critically, not from a critical filmmaking perspective. Oh, that shot could have been better, or maybe he could have lined. But the themes, approaching those, and then afterwards, don't just leave. Don't just leave it with that with the 13-year-old. Yeah, they might be prepared for some of the themes, but then continue that on.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, which interview we have next?
So next we got to talk after that with Donald and with Steve, the director. We weren't allowed to take our good camera in. I probably could have snuck it in if I wanted to, but we tried. We called the theater ahead of time. They wouldn't let us. So this is actually filmed off the iPhone. It doesn't look as good as the other one for sure, but
I look good.
Yeah, he does. But all right, here we go.
Hey, it's Heath Mulligan with the Techology Show. We've just finished watching the Blue Like Jazz screening here at the Hollywood 20 in Greenville, South Carolina. I'm here with Donald Miller, the author of Blue Like Jazz, and Steve Taylor, the director of the film, and they've been kind enough to give us a few minutes. I just want to ask you guys, how do you hope that this film impacts people inside the church and outside the church?
Well, I mean, the priority is that it's a story,
right?
And so stories really shape the way we see life because they kind of teach us what's important, what's not important. So what's important in this story is authenticity, and this is the lead character is a guy who's had an encounter with Jesus, and he kind of is tempted to walk away from that due to some social pressures, which makes him inauthentic.
Right.
So really, the point is, both inside the church and outside the church, is we have to bring our whole selves into our relationships, or we're not getting to know each other.
Right.
And that's sort of a plot theme in the movie, and Don in the movie resolves some of that through a bunch of drama.
Right, right. Now, and in the movie, it really is about this guy who's grown up in this very conservative Christian background, and now he's around all these non-Christians, and you see the conversation that takes place. So what do you see? How do you see this playing out in communities where Christians and non-Christians are sitting and having these discussions about God that maybe they haven't before, but this movie encourages people to kind of take that step to start talking to people?
Yeah. Well, I think you described it really well. I think what we're hoping that the film is a bit of a bridge,
right,
between those two cultures, and gives them things to talk about and a narrative framework within which to say, hey, we could live that out. We could actually have those conversations and ease some of the tension, perhaps, that exists in our culture.
Right. Donald, you said in the Q&A that really Blue Like Jazz is a collection of essays. So Steve, what was it like and how hard was it taking a collection of essays and turning them into a narrative film? What was that like?
Well, you have to start with an author who's willing to kind of let go of a lot of preconceived ideas of what the movie would be, and that's where Don was a great collaborator, because he was up for changing things about even his character. In the book is a writer in your early 30s, and we decided it would be more interesting if we made Don's character a college student, and from there, we shaped things, took kind of certain kernels from the book, and then try to shape a new narrative around it, and we were really happy with the results. It took a while, but we got there.
Part of the reason this film got made was this groundswell of a grassroots movement with a Kickstarter campaign. And how do we translate that? Because really there is such a following for Blue Like Jazz. How do we translate into getting people out opening weekend on April 13th, 2012? How can we help make that happen for you guys?
Well, Steve will have some things to say, but you guys are the right audience because you're a tech audience. So we're actually depending on people tweeting a link to our trailer. That's a big one. If people will watch the trailer, it has the most impact on box office, people going to see the film. And then actually just getting the word out that we're in theaters April 13th, and that's a Friday. It's easy. Friday the 13th will be the non-horror movie in the theater. Friday the 13th is the date that this movie opens, and Hollywood runs on money. And so if enough people don't come to the box office, we might not make it to week 2 or week 3. But if enough people come on that Friday and the following Saturday, we can survive for 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 weeks, and the film will grow and have a much greater impact. So sharing the trailer is huge. On Facebook, Twitter, your blogs, just get the trailer out there as much as you possibly can.
I know you guys have been on tour here a couple of days. They've got an awesome bus we got some pictures of. Where's your next stop? And what's been the feeling for you guys? Because here, you've made this great movie. What's been the reception, and how has that made you feel about everything?
It's been a great reception. It's been better than we had hoped for. We're in Raleigh tomorrow night, and then we keep heading up the East Coast. And it's really fun after all this time to finally have a finished movie to show in a real theater. And get a living, breathing audience, laughing in all the right places and applauding at the end. So it's been good.
Great. Well, I appreciate Donald and Steve giving us some time. You can go to Blue Like Jazz, the movie, find out more about it. But more importantly, April 13th, 2012, butts in the seats. Make it happen. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.
I was 31 on the camera. There you go.
A couple of things strike me here. Number one, he said it's going to be the non-horror movie.
Yeah.
For some fundamentalists, it will be a horror movie.
Well,
And second, let me say this real quick. Matthew and I have always, Matthew was the first one to put me onto this, talked about how great Heath is off the cuff with these interviews. And I just discovered he's spectacular. But, this is where the years of watching the professional wrestling have paid off for you.
Telling you, people make fun of that, but when you're
I see it, man.
when you're 12 years old and you're looking in the mirror and you're practicing talking, and it really, my mom thought I was crazy.
But it's paying off now.
That's right.
Yeah. All right, you can say.
Oh, TG will tell you how nervous I was. I was just like, all right,
couldn't
you got to
hardly
remember these questions. I'm like, okay.
I can tell you're nervous, but you
as
did a
he's
good job.
standing there, he goes, I gotta go to the bathroom.
I got to go to the bathroom. Like, let's hurry this.
Crazy.
But the Ben, I can't remember his last name. I want to say Pearson, the cinematographer, does a great job in the movie, but just also was co-wrote the movie. Was just a great guy. He was taking pictures.
Yeah, you actually heard the camera going during that interview.
Yeah,
that
yeah,
was my picture of my right ear being taken those
It was
few
just-
times.
It was just a
That's on
great,
Facebook, yeah.
great experience. And Donald Miller really got the Southern Wesleyan treatment because Saturday night in Orlando, he was with Jason Williams, an alumni who stole a first edition copy of Donald's first book, Prayer and the Art of Volkswagen Maintenance, which Donald signed for him. Saw us Sunday night and then was hanging out with Matt Leroy Monday night. So
The SWU connection.
maybe we can get him for spiritual emphasis.
Yeah.
Work on that, okay?
So we do have, let's show this one more time here, Heath. We have a poster to give away. Let me
Yes.
let you know how this went down. Heath was like, oh, we need to get them to sign this poster, and then we'll give it away. And I said, oh, I'll do that with mine, too. And then he said, I think I'm going to keep one, and we'll give one away. And I was like, Heath! so
we
this
may
is,
give-
I am the sacrificial one here.
Oh,
I'm giving
No, I'm
away.
giving mine away, and I'm going to keep yours.
We'll give it away doing the same method. We're going to talk about it over the next week on Twitter and Facebook. You'll get 2 chances to enter, one on Twitter, one on Facebook. Just mention that you'd like to be in for that if you'd have interest in it. But they both signed it, Steve Taylor, the director, and Donald Miller, the author of Blue Like Jazz, there. And we will send it to you in some kind of protective.
I'll take care of it.
We'll get
sure.
it. We'll get
It'll
it
be
taken care of.
protected.
But go to our Facebook page, write something there, tweet us at Techology, let us know you want to be entered, and that'll get you in for that.
And we'll
Alrighty.
probably and I'm really, really passionate about this movie and the book and the work, especially after meeting the guys. You just
It does
you just-
something, doesn't it?
You just want this to be huge,
Yeah.
and so we'll probably have some other giveaways and.
All right. Listen, let's talk about what's coming up in the future. Next week, I am really excited about this. We've got Timmy Young in
Yes.
studio. Heath, talk about him just a tad here.
Timmy Young is a 2011 graduate of Southern Wesleyan University. He was a ministry major and just literally felt God call him to be homeless. And so went through this process of trying to figure out where he was going to go and did some test trips and ended up last September in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And spent about 6 months down there just living among and ministering to and learning about the homeless population there. Really built some great relationships, and he is back now and kind of he'll be working at a camp this summer. So we're going to have him on and just kind of get the nitty-gritty. He read, a lot of the guys in my youth group read the book Under the Overpass, which Bob Weitzel referred to in our interview with him. And Timmy actually went and did it. And I'm telling you,
So impressive.
it was when you're a youth pastor and one of your former students comes up and tells you, I'm going to go be homeless.
And he
like
was
just-
homeless, and we got the emails once a week,
Yeah.
and you could see the fear and
Yeah,
things
yeah.
at first, and also to watch him get his feet underneath him.
Yeah.
It was powerful over the
it
weeks
was-
and the months.
It was amazing, and he's actually working on kind of putting his journals into a book form and talking about that. But it was just neat to.
Well, it's
just to see.
going to be a great interview. And then the week after that, another great show. Teej, talk a little bit about the Table Project.
Yeah, so the Table Project is a in-church social networking deal, and we got Jason, who's one of the project leads and spokesperson for this, who's going to be joining us to talk about this. I'm hoping that we'll also be having Cody Thomas in the studio with us, because he has actually been in talks with the Table Project to potentially get things set up there for First Wesleyan Church, perhaps. So he knows a little bit more about it, perhaps, than even I do. But really cool thing that they've got going on. There's, your questions are, well, isn't this just Facebook, or couldn't we just do this? But they really do serve I don't know how to word it, but a niche that nobody else, even Facebook, can fill by bringing and building community inside of the church. So that's basically going to be the show that day. We're going to dedicate the entire time. If it takes us 30 minutes to an hour to just talk with them about that, that's where we'll be going on March the 21st.
All right. And then the show, the week after that's a great show on March the 28th. We got Stephanie Ryan, who'll be coming in studio. She is in charge of children's ministries at FWC Alive, but she and the church there have become a resource for our district and helping other churches out. They have been so accessible, and so we're going to talk to her about children's ministries and some of the issues that are related to that. Another great show, April the 4th, we got Wayne Schmidt talk about his book, Ministry Velocity. This is the book that Outreach Magazine referenced as their resource of the year for 2012. It's getting high praise, and always great to have Wayne with us. April the 11th, Beth Peterson will come in studio. We'll bring Aaron Dowds in via Skype from Scotland. They're going to talk about Okipe and the orphanage and the house that's being built. Matthew, you're going to be taking a work team.
Yeah, I'll be there
on
to
a
work
team.
on that project. Yeah, in
May.
April. May. Sorry,
Yeah.
May. Yeah, I better get
Yeah.
that right. Yeah, in May.
Yeah, and then we're hoping that part of this is that you will eventually then take a team out of the church.
Yeah,
with your pastor.
that's my goal, is to take a team. And, I've been actually working on somebody else who's in our very presence right now to say, hey, join with us in this team.
He's obligated.
Our two churches.
Yeah.
He's obligated because he roped us into a 5K.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's
he didn't.
right.
He didn't ask us. He told us.
Yeah.
So yeah. And then April the 25th, another one of our favorites, Mark Wilson, and he's going to discuss with us his new book, Filled Up, Poured Out. That is supposed to come out, I believe, March the 15th. So the release of it is imminent, and so we've got some great invitations out. We're waiting to hear from. We have a great lineup over the next couple months here. So
and we're really
excited.
We're
big
really
time.
gearing up for General Conference. That is a go. I got our equipment.
We got our booth.
We got our booth, and I'm excited. I'm just excited.
Yeah.
It's a good day to be alive.
All right. And our new computer did not crash.
Not yet.
No.
Watch it just die right here at the end. Okay, bye, everyone. And we lose everything. No, it's doing okay so far. Still a little wonky on the cameras. We're getting some weird gain issues, but we're going to try to get it fixed. It's been a delight, though, to come to you in 16:9 aspect ratio, 720p on YouTube. It's going to be, and that makes this guy's heart happy.
Yeah. Listen, if you want to see any of the videos that we posted, you can go to our website, thetechnologyshow.com. If you want to contact us, send your emails to thetechnologyshow@gmail.com. Or you can leave us a voicemail by calling 3049-TEOLOGY. That's 304-986-5649. Leave us a message. We may even play your comments on the air. Thanks for joining us. Goodbye, everybody.
Adios, amigos. Sorry, I stole your line.
See. Adios.